Good evening, everyone. Just to flag that we're waiting for one of our guests who's just been a little bit delayed today, but he's informed us he's on his way, so we're going to wait 5 or 10 minutes before starting, just to give him time to arrive. So we'll begin in 5 to 10 minutes' time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. Right, okay, everyone, shall we start? First of all, we've got apologies for absence.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've received apologies for absence this evening from Councillor Louise Ashbury, I beg your pardon, who is substituted tonight by Councillor Ying Tong Perrott. And apologies for my words.
Right, thank you very much. And could you talk us through the fire precautions, as we've got 3 guests here?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So there's no scheduled fire alarm this evening, so if you do hear the alarm, which is a continuous ringing bell, then please assume it to be legitimate and leave via the main entrance to the chamber, down the stairs, not using the lift, out the doors, and then right to the fire assembly point in Knoll Road car park. There'll be signposts along the way and follow the crowd. Please don't use the stairs, please don't use the lift, use the stairs. It's the first meeting of the year, folks. Please use the stairs and not the lift. If anyone is unable to use the stairs in the event of an emergency, then please make yourself known to me in such an instance and accommodations can be made. And please don't return to the building unless you've been advised it's safe to do so. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, James. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year and a special welcome to James, who's here for the first time, helping us out. So, from my announcements, first of all, I'd just like to let you know we have written to Surrey Highways with various questions that some of you asked. We haven't yet heard back from them, so hopefully by next meeting we will have done, and I'll be able to report on their answers then. Tonight, we're delighted to welcome representatives from Affinity Water, who are the water suppliers to some of Surrey Heath. We did contact South East Water a few times to ask them to attend, but we got no response. I did wonder if they had a crystal ball and knew that they would be rather busy today. Anyway, we are really pleased that Affinity Water are here, and we look forward to hearing about the plans they have to cope with supplying our water, faced with the many difficulties there are due to climate change and a rather ageing infrastructure. So I'm sure we'll have many questions for you, but we'll treat you nicely. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Right, the minutes of the previous meeting. Is everybody happy for me to sign them? Okay. Right. So, have we got any declarations of interest? I don't think we need to say that we all use water. Anything like that. Yes?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify. I understand the leader wrote to Frimley Fuel Allotments inviting them to come and attend external partnerships. Obviously, there was a clear statement that you and I wouldn't be sitting on that committee if that were to happen. I just wanted to clarify if they were coming tonight.
No, we haven't yet had a reply to the letter.
Thank you.
Councillor Hode?
Thank you. On declarations, I work for a company in the process filtration industry, and we do sell some of our products into the water industry, so a very small declaration. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, there are no public questions, so we will move over to you. So thank you all very much. I haven't introduced you as such because I thought you might introduce yourselves individually.
We did prepare some slides. Would you like them up on the screen, or do people have them in front of them? What works best?
No, we want them up on the screen because there are people watching.
There are, okay.
Yes, if that's...
That is absolutely
yep.
fine. Let's just do that quickly. And is that best to join the team session and share screen?
Yes, please.
In that way, is it? Okay, just bear with me. Whilst we're doing that, should we start with some introductions? That might be helpful. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Anton Gazard. I'm our Director of Customer Delivery at Affinity Water. So that is all things within our operations team. So all things water production and supply. So we obviously have the teams that abstract the water out of either the rivers or the aquifers, all things water treatment, and then our colleagues that move it through the water network through to customers' taps. All sits within my remit, and also a 24/7 control room based at our head office up at Hatfield. I'm joined by, I'll pass to my right, a few of my colleagues and Richard on the Teams call already. I'll let them introduce. They're going to be sort of the technical experts on a couple of the areas we might just deep dive on this evening.
Hello, everybody. My name is Elias Karapanos. I'm the head of Water Resources Management Planning. In 3 words, this is supply-demand balance for the long term. So we're looking 50 years ahead on the supply-demand balance. Thank you.
I'm James Curtis. I am head of leakage, not a translates very well outside of the water industry. I get it all the time. Even my family, I get the titters and giggles from. But it is what it says on the tin. I'm responsible for making sure we reduce our leakage across our whole network.
And apologies, because I clearly didn't get the brief on pressing the button, so apologies if you couldn't hear me. I just need a couple of seconds to join the team session and probably get a Wi-Fi password to do so. Is that?
Should I add my introduction, Anton?
Yeah, go for it.
Please, thanks.
Hi, yeah, my name is Richard Emmett. I'm head of public affairs at Affinity Water. That means that I'm responsible for our relationship with government primarily, with a major focus on reform of the water industry, which, as I'm sure you're aware, is a big and major and pressing issue at the moment following the publication of the Independent Water Commission report and the imminent publication of a white paper on water industry reform. So it's relationships with government, local government and other stakeholders. Thank you very much.
I can join the team meetings here, that's fine.
It's really loud in a minute, we'll know. Richard, could you try saying hello? Richard, could you try saying hello just to see how loud it is?
Hello, can you hear me? Is that loud enough? Perhaps not.
I'm just struggling with internet connection still. If you've got it on the slide, should I just talk to the slides and should we go from there? Fantastic, thank you, James. Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Have I done the things I need to? Apologies. I thought our technology was advanced, but this is next level. Okay, so like I said, we've done our introductions. Thank you. Thanks very much for having us. We've prepared a few slides. There's probably far too much to cover. Chair, how long would you like us to present for, just to manage expectations? Because we can talk for England.
For about 20 minutes.
Fantastic. I will keep my bits short because I could probably do that on my own. Okay, if I can just move you through to the slide that says UK water industry, just in terms of a bit of background for people that may not be aware of the UK water industry and sort of the regulatory world that we operate within. So Affinity Water, we are one of 17 water companies, split primarily into 2. So those that do just clean water and those that do clean water and waste services. So Affinity Water, we are a clean water provider only, and then we work with Anglian Water and Thames Water, who are the sewage providers that cover that serve our customers also. We work with a number of different regulators that you can see in the box in the middle at the top there. I'll just run through them sort of real quick. I'm sure most of you are aware, but the first of those is Ofwat. They are the water industry's economics regulator. So their primary function is to work with us to make sure that when we submit business plans, which we do every 5 years, those business plans represent good value of money for customers. So obviously we will put in for all of the different plans that we have and the investment needs that we have to service our assets and to meet the levels of service that we are committing to our customers. And then we have a process by which we demonstrate that those choices represent the priorities that our customers want us to focus on, that they are both willing to pay for those services and also that they are affordable for customers. And as a result, that is the process by which water bills get set for customers and the levels of investment get agreed with the regulator. We also work closely with the Environment Agency, both at a regional and a national level. Primarily, this is around agreeing with the agency the levels of water that we can abstract from the environment, but also a number of different permit processes around how we might discharge back to the environment if we need to. Like I say, we don't deal with wastewater, but we do have some waste elements as a result of the water treatment process. We also work closely with the Environment Agency on what we call our WINEP schemes, which is the Water Industry National Environment Programme. So investment in making sure that where we have interfaces with the environment, we are leaving the environment in a sustainably better position than when we started. Our drinking water inspectorate is headed up by Marcus Rink, that you may have seen in the EFRA committee recently with South East Water. We work with Marcus and his other, as the chief inspector, but also with other inspectors. The DWI, as we refer to them, are responsible for working with us to make sure that the quality of the product that we provide is obviously of the right water quality. It's a food grade product and is fit for human consumption with our customers. We also work with the Consumer Council for Water, who keep us true on all things customer service. And then the other one that's not listed there is the Health and Safety Executive, should we work with if we were to have any serious incident or injuries. If I can just move forward to the next slide, please. In terms of sort of who we are as Affinity Water, then, of those water-only companies, we are the largest water-only company in the UK. We're proud to serve just under 4 million customers in the southeast of England. Very diverse communities that we serve, both geographically. So you can see from the three different areas on the map, the bulk of our customers are in Surrey, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, in what we call our central region. We have two smaller regions, one over in Clacton, and then one down in Folkestone and Dover on the coast as well. Within those 4 million customers, we do have some fairly significant critical national infrastructure, mostly some of the larger airports. So London Heathrow, London Stansted, London Luton are all airports within that we serve, as well as places like Wembley Stadium, the Port of Dover, etc. So there are some significant customers that we serve within our population. And then a real mix in terms of an urban and rural communities, and then customers from all different demographics. And we can talk through some of the slides later about how we serve those customers, particularly some of the customers that are more vulnerable and perhaps need our services even more so. Other thing I would just quickly call out is we do operate in an area that is deemed water stressed. We don't have an abundance of water, albeit we can talk about where your water comes from in particular, and Ilias will talk to the water resources position in the round and for your community. When we talk about Surrey Heath, for us, that is in what we call our Way community. So if you hear us talking about the Way community, it's the bottom one there over on your left-hand side, in the well, I'll say pink, but definitely the dark pink. We can just move on, please. In fact, we can probably skip 2 slides in the interest of time. I'm sure you know your map. I just wanted to touch on a little bit in terms of where your water comes from, just so you're aware in terms of how we supply our customers in the area and obviously your constituents. We have about 100 different water treatment works from where we take our water and supply it to customers. We provide, on average, just under 1 billion litres of water a day. That can rise significantly, either due to leakage outbreaks where we have severe weather, very well managed by Mr. Curtis over on the right, and we'll talk to that in just a second. But actually, also through hot weather, when we do get some rare sunshine in the UK, our demand for water can go up by about 40%. So 1 billion litres can very quickly become 1.3, 1.4 billion litres, which does come with a level of challenge that we can talk to. Those water treatment works split primarily into 2 different types. So we have what we call our groundwater sources. So you probably may not be able to see it on the screen, but to the top half of the map, what you'll see is lots and lots and lots of different small dots. So about 95 of our water treatment works are in the north of our patch. And that is where we drill boreholes down into the aquifers to abstract the water. And naturally, as a result, the water is very clean, so it doesn't go through a particularly intensive water treatment process. It's very much local treatment on site, and then it's normally pumped up to local storage, normally a water tower, serving smaller villages or towns, and then gravity fed through to customers. In the south of the region, which is where we are today, so everything from sort of Heathrow, sort of further south for us, is what we call our surface water treatment work. So you'll see far fewer dots, which are the water treatment works, but they are much larger in size. So in the south, we have our key surface works are Iver water treatment works that you see if you come around the M25 by the M4. You have Egham water treatment works, and then treatment works further at Chertsey and at Walton. So Surrey Heath customers are served primarily from our Egham water treatment works. Egham water treatment works can produce just over 100 million litres of water every day. It's just based down in Staines on the causeway. We take the water directly out of the River Thames. It goes through quite an intensive treatment process on site because the raw water quality in the River Thames can obviously change with different weather conditions. From there, we pump that water to a reservoir up in Sunninghill that can hold about 15 million litres of water. And then from there, we pump it further up to Black Hills Reservoir that holds about 10 million litres of water. And then from there, we distribute water to our customers. From a resilience perspective, and Elias will go into a bit more detail, those large surface works are all connected through what we call our Southern Link main. So if we were to have issues with our Egham water treatment works, we can move water from our other large surface works, Iver being the largest at 230 million litres of water a day. And we do have some interconnectivity within the local network to rezone customer supplies should we need to, should we have local incidents in the area. I'll just pause there in terms of if there's any sort of questions in terms of the water supply and where it comes from. Elias will touch on some of the detail later about future plans and future resilience. No, I'll keep going then. If I can just move on to the AMP8 priority. So apologies for the acronyms, we're very guilty of that. And AMP for us is an asset management period. They are 5-year periods from which we submit business plans through to Ofwat, our regulator. I just wanted to touch on some of the key things that we are focusing on in this 5-year period, which began in 2025 in April. So we're just closing out the year one of what we call AMP8. So it represents our biggest ever investment programme, just over £2 billion of investment. And some of the key things that we're focusing on are, firstly, reducing abstraction from nearby to the chalk streams. We're very proud to have 10% of the world's rare chalk streams within our supply area, and we are committed to stopping any unsustainable abstraction from close to those chalk aquifers. That comes through a process what we call sustainability reductions that we agree with the Environment Agency to either lower or surrender abstraction licences from where we take water. And then we have a series that we call water resource planning to look at where we can replace that water from, sometimes within our own water supply area, but as Elias will touch on, actually more innovative ways of bringing water in from across the UK to provide a more resilient supply of water. We're investing just over £150 million over the next 5 years in water treatment upgrades. We have a process that we call drinking water safety planning. So that's with the DWI that we talk to, so we understand the risks that are within the catchment areas we supply, and we respond to those ever-evolving emerging risks to make sure treatment will keep water fit for purpose. James will talk to how we are spending the close to £100 million on leakage activity, with, again, some quite traditional approaches to leakage that we've done for many, many years, but also some really innovative techniques involving, well, not quite spaceships, but certainly some satellites and some things I won't claim to understand. A core part of our programme is our smart metering programme. Our customers are largely water metered anyway, but the technology has evolved, so we've moved from what we call a dumb meter, a meter that can be physically and manually read, to what we call an automatic meter reader, whereby you can drive past that meter and it will send its supply to you. The latest sort of evolution of water metering is what we call a smart meter that will send information every day and 15-minute information through a fixed network back to Affinity Water, and we have large customer transformation programs to be able to share that information with customers to have a better conversation about how they are using water, how they can use water in a more sustainable way, both to leave more water in the environment, but also in terms of reducing some of their customer bills. Water demand linked to that, we have plans to reduce water demand by 60 million litres, so we're probably one of the few industries that want people to buy less of their product. We are, like I said, we are in a water scarce area, so what we call per capita consumption is quite high in this area in the southeast of England compared to other parts within the UK, and we have quite active programmes to reduce that, smart metering being one of those, but also working with customers to understand how they can use water efficiently within their homes. We have some work on social tariffs where we're looking to support a further 150,000 people who are our most vulnerable customers. We can talk about some of the tariffs later on and some of the new tariffs that we've got coming up. And then finally, those WINET programs, the environment programs I spoke to, are all about understanding the catchments, so the areas from which we take our water, and working with the Environment Agency to agree programmes to improve biodiversity, things like river restoration as well. So quite a broad portfolio within that £2 billion worth of investment. Again, I'll just pause for any questions.
Councillor Hode.
Yeah.
Councillor Hode's going first.
Thank you. I'm interested in the smart meters. Obviously, as you said, your goal is actually to get people to use less water per capita. How would you assess smart meters in that way? I'm assuming, I don't actually have a smart meter yet, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but when people have had a meter installed, do you see a notable decrease in their consumption now that they're paying for it and they can see it? And if so, what kind of order of magnitude?
So there is evidence from other water companies that have gone ahead of us with smart metering journey that there is a 10 to 12% reduction in consumption by having a smart meter. So there's a lot that we're doing in that space. We're going heavy on in the next 5-year period with 400,000 smart meters and an additional 1.1 million in the next 5-year period by 2035. So effectively by 2035, every customer will have a smart meter. That is based on the evidence we have seen. Now, we obviously assume that is the same for us, but as data is coming through, we will assess that continually to see whether we get that benefit.
Yeah, Councillor Rowlands.
Kent at the moment, and looking at one of your graphs here, was it last month, according to that graph, we were perilously close to a great expansion in the demand for water. It looks like that. I don't know why that was. I understand we used to get some of the water here from Frimley Green. There was the water supply. Has that stopped now? Or you might not know that. That's a historical connection. I know it's coming all the way from Egham, but...
I think, Councillor Rowland, that's southeast water. Okay.
Sorry?
That is southeast water.
Right.
And Affinity Water have their own system.
Oh, it's not drinking water. Okay, fine.
Yes, it's, so I think you probably don't know much about that, do you?
Yeah, and by all means, if we've got sort of local questions with people in terms of the detail, we're more than happy to follow up with some of those questions as well, if that's helpful.
Councillor Garrett?
Thank you. I'd like to hear more about your tariff for the more social housing type customers. How does that work for you? Sorry, if I've jumped early because you mentioned it. Yeah, that's fine. If you mentioned it, but no, that's fine.
Really, if there are any questions on what they've done so far, said, and I think not, so we'll carry on with the rest of it and then we'll have questions.
If we can move on then to the water resources section, which is the slides that feel like we're probably going to go real high-level overview, I'd say, in the interest of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'll skip through some of these, but just for people that may not be aware of the WRMP process or Water Resources Management Plan, it is a statutory requirement for every water company to produce a WRMP every 5 years. Although we're looking ahead 50 years, the minimum requirement is 25 years. Every water company has gone ahead for 50 years. The last plan that was put in October of last year deals with the period 2025 to 2075. And at the moment where you produce one plan, you start the process for another one in 5 years' time. So we're looking at supply-demand balance, how much water do we have versus the demand that we have and the forecast demand, climate change, all these other aspects that feed into that for the minimum of 25 years, but as I say, we go further. Now, we're not just doing this at the affinity level, but we're also working with other water companies to do it at the regional level. So all the water companies in the southeast come together, 6 companies in the southeast, and form the Water Resources Southeast Group, and they do a regional plan together. So it's not just the affinity plan, but it's the regional plan first, and then that is translated to the affinity plan. So we plan together, and then we plan individually. We also have, because of our sort of geographical spread, sort of collaboration with Water Resources East, so we collaborate with them as well. It's another regional group with a different set of water companies. This plan talks to other plans. Anton touched on the WINEP, the Water Industry National Environment Program, the business plan, the price review, the long-term delivery strategy. So it all comes together, and it is the foundation, effectively, for the long term, and then we're cutting that in the short term for the next 5 years, the business plan, how much of that is going to be delivered in the next 5 years. Next slide, please. Our plan, in summary, there's 3 key pillars here. I'm not going to go through this in any level of detail, but effectively, we're looking at demand. What can we do on demand? And this is all the orange blobs over there. How can we reduce existing demand and accommodate growth? How we can connect our systems better, so where we have the water to where the water needs to go, so we build the network, or we expand on the network to make sure that we increase that connectivity, and then how we can bring new resources, as we have to reduce certain sources for sustainability reasons, as Anton mentioned, and then bring new resources to make sure that we have water at the time that we're going to need it. For example, if a new reservoir is needed, we need to plan 15 to 20 years ahead of the need actually coming. So we have to forecast when we're going to need that. So we put that all together, again, on a sort of 50-year timescale, and we're looking at all these options at the same time. Next slide, please. In terms of the demand for water, there's these 4 key inputs in there. You go household demand, or PCC, per capita consumption. That is about 2/3 of the water we put into supply. So that's quite a big chunk of what customers use in their homes. And then non-household demand, so business demand, leakage, and other minor components, as you see there. The challenges that I put there on the right: population growth. Obviously, we have to forecast what that growth will be, and we have low, medium, high, so we have a level of uncertainty within those forecasts. We have relatively high PCC, and that is because our unmeasured customers consume a lot more than those that are measured. Again, so on the smart metering journey we talked about, there are still some customers that are not on a meter, let alone a smart meter. And therefore, there is evidence that when they transition to a meter, and that is a smart meter, there is an expected benefit there as well. So it's getting those customers from unmeasured to measured and onto smart meter, and for those that are on conventional meters, to smart meters. So by 2035, everybody will be on a smart meter pretty much. And obviously, all the new developments will come with a smart meter by default. Climate change, we talked about earlier, it can affect both the demand and the supply, and we're looking at both aspects as to what that impact will be. And more recently, growth with regards to AI data centers. That is something relatively new that all the industry is looking at, because water can be used for cooling purposes and so on. There are alternatives, we understand, but there's a bit of a tipping point as to what is being used. But again, given where we are around London and so on, it's a certain type of demand that we'll have to accommodate. Next slide, please. We already mentioned smart meters, so I'm not going to go there, but basically that is one of the key things that we've enrolled already. The target for this 5-year period up to 2030 is 400,000, and as I say, continuing with a further 1.1 million after that. James is going to talk more about leakage reduction, but we have a target between now and 2050 to reduce leakage by 50%. That is starting from the baseline of 2020. So it's quite a challenging target, but we are putting a lot of effort on that to reduce demand. Next slide, please. On the network connectivity, we are doing schemes on a 5-year basis, and we have what we call Connect 2050, which is basically a program of works to help us create a motorway for the water, if you like, so we can move water around our supply area a lot more freely, free up the bottlenecks, make sure that we can push water from one zone to another and so on, as our supply base changes every 5 years. So you're going to hear that term Connect 2050, but basically what it means is network upgrades to ensure that we can move water freely and sort of overcome any bottlenecks. And then the next one, if we move to the next slide, please. Managing the supply of water. So first of all, we're looking at, is there any existing surplus that can be used that is sustainable from anywhere within our sources? And once that has been exhausted, where else can we bring water into this area? The area we operate in overall has been designated as over-licensed and over-abstracted, so there's not a lot of water sort of sitting around. So we have to bring water from elsewhere outside of the company boundaries. The first strategic resource option is the Grand Union Canal, where we're proposing to bring up to 100 megalitres, that's million litres per day of water from sort of Birmingham, sort of that area, down the Grand Union Canal using existing infrastructure, and then re-abstracting it at the bottom end, treating it to potable water standard, and then putting into our network for onward distribution. So that is not just although it comes to Affinity and the Affinity customers will benefit from that, obviously it benefits the region as well, like the whole of the WRAC area. And it's one of the first strategic resource options that can be implemented relatively quickly because it uses existing infrastructure. Then after that, in our plan, we say that we will need additional water by year 2045. So we have what we call SESRO, or Southeast Strategic Resource Option. This is the famous Abingdon Reservoir that we, Thames Water and Southern Water, combined have selected in our plans. So for us, the need based on the certain demand forecast and the supply forecast is around 2045, but again, decisions need to be made now on that, and work has to progress now. So that's on the supply side. If we move on to the next graphic, you see a little bit sort of where these big strategic resource options are coming in. So on the top left diagram, you see at the north of our central region, that's where the entry point of the Grand Union Canal scheme is, at the service reservoir near Luton. And from there, obviously, it will travel through our supply area as needed, depending on demand and resource availability. And then, sort of from the southern end, we have the SESRO, or the Abingdon Reservoir, if we call it that way, where water is going to be captured during winter runoff events, put into the reservoir, released back from the reservoir to the main River Thames to be abstracted by Thames Water using existing infrastructure through the reservoirs around Heathrow, and then from there put through treatment and taken into our supply area. So we call that Thames to Affinity transfer, because it uses existing infrastructure from Thames Water to bring into the Affinity zones. And then obviously utilizing existing connections, we have import-export capability with our neighboring water companies, so we're utilizing those before we go on to utilizing the bigger strategic options. And then on the right, you see what I mentioned earlier about the Connect 2050 program, how we move water around, how we maximize that connectivity more and more and more on a 5-year basis. So between now and Connect 2050, there's a whole host of things that we have to do to make sure that the water can move from A to B to C to D to where it needs to go. Okay, so the next one talks specifically about the Grand Union Canal. Again, I mentioned, from around about Birmingham, there's a water recycling centre there. At the moment, this water goes sort of north and into the Humber estuary. There is surplus water there, which is going to be taken from that recycling centre, treated to a very high standard before it is discharged to the canal at a place called Atherstone, and then travel about 100 kilometers south, mostly by gravity, but there's a few bypasses where it will be a pumped system, so to make sure that we bypass locks and so on and so forth, and then abstract at the bottom end through a new water treatment works, made potable, and then through a pipeline coming into a closed reservoir, surface reservoir near Luton. So the first year of operation for that is 2032-33 for the first 50 megalitres, and then unlocking the full 100 megalitres the year after. On the next graphic, you see a little bit more of the sort of complexity of the Connect 2050 program. This is the network reinforcement, if you like, and how we intend to move water around. Overall, and I think if we sort of bring it closer to home here, there is some existing surplus in terms of our license capability, the abstraction capability from the surface works, so what we take from the River Thames. And network-wise, we're looking to upgrade that connectivity to make sure that that surplus can be released to the neighboring zones, so we can move water around as a displacement and meet the demand in those areas where we have to reduce abstraction for sustainability reasons.
Is it worth just a pause there? It's quite
a lot.
It's quite a lot and go quite technical. I think sort of in summary, albeit we are Affinity Water, obviously one large water company, we're made up historically of a number of smaller water companies, and the way the networks are set up and the treatment processes reflect that. So in this area, we would have been North Surrey Water, based out of the Egham Treatment Works, was the head office. Water wouldn't have needed to go any further. So a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is to look at where we do have a surplus of water. This is a community where we do, and looking at maximising our own ability to move our own water within our own region. So new pumping stations, new we call them trunk mains, larger water pipes, are all about being able to take the water where we do have it to areas where either we don't have a surplus of water or where we are committed to reducing abstraction. So we are trying to take less water from certain places through, in agreement with the Environment Agency. And then in the longer term to become more resilient, because the South East on the whole is in a deficit of water, is bringing water in from other areas across the UK where there is again a surplus of water, and where we can use existing infrastructure in innovative ways, like the Grand Union Canal. That's what we're looking to do. Obviously, longer term strategic sort of projects and investment. They understood me more than you really asked. That's what it is.
I mean, Councillor Thompson sort of got missed last time round. So.
Favouritism. Put this on. Got two quick questions. The first one should be very quick. I'm interested to know the water that's sitting in the reservoir at Egham, for example. Is that fully treated drinking water, or is it treated again before it comes out of the tap?
Yeah, Oliver, thank you. Great question. So the vast majority of when we talk about storage reservoirs, actually they are treated water. So whereas, so if you drove around the M25, for example, near Heathrow Airport, and you see the big reservoirs with the sheep grazing on the side, that is a raw water supply that Thames Water own, for example. So they, for example, they abstract water from effectively the same point at us from the River Thames. We have a tunnel from the River Thames there that goes straight into our Ivor water treatment works and is treated as raw water. Their water goes into their large raw water reservoirs, where it then has the benefit of settling out. So effectively, they are more resilient to changes in river water quality. We don't have that same luxury. We don't have large quantities of treated water. In fact, probably the only place where we do have a significant amount of raw water storage is at our Chertsey water treatment works, which is just opposite Thorpe Park. We have behind the golf course there. We have about 6 days of raw water storage on our Chertsey works, which we call bankside storage. Almost everywhere else for us is treated water. So we have about a day's worth of water supply in storage at any one time as treated. That's why you will very rarely see an Affinity Water open reservoir. All of ours are concrete structured, sealed, with normally covered by grass. So yeah, it's all of ours treatment. So someone like Egham, for example, there's no water storage on site. Literally, the River Thames runs on the fence line. It's 2 metres, it's the width of the canal path, straight into the works, 130 million litres every day, then distributed out Sunning Hill, Black Hill. It actually goes up to Allenby towards Heathrow as well.
Thank you. And the other question is completely different. It's more about understanding your commercial model. This might be quite a big question, but obviously you're talking about putting in smart meters, which I imagine is a hugely expensive undertaking. And then you're hoping that once you put the smart waters in, people are going to buy less of your product. So that obviously the economics of that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. Assuming you're spending Affinity Water's money on the smart meters and also your revenues are just what people are spending. I'm not sure if that's the commercial model or if you're...
I'll do my best to summarise,
Yeah.
and I will just caveat that I'm not the expert in this space. But so overall, the way that we work with Ofwat, the regulator, is so we will set out the business plan, the investment that we would like to make. So in this instance, over the next 5 years, it's a £2.3 billion investment in our infrastructure, whether that be water mains renewals, new water reservoirs, commencing projects like the Grand Union Canal, etc., smart metering, all of those good things, as well as sort of keep the lights on money. We employ about 1,500 employees in the local area, etc. That money is effectively translated into customers' bills. So ultimately, our customers will pay for that investment in the long run. We have what we call fast cash and slow cash. So we have somewhere sort of it's called OPEX, operational expenditure, where customers pay for in the nearer term for services they are going to benefit from. Things like the Grand Union Canal, for example, they will be funded, they will be benefiting customers sort of long past our generations. That's what we call slow money, our capital expenditure. In that instance, we do secure investment from investors, from our owners. So in this instance, they injected £150 million worth of equity into the business to fund those projects, and those monies will be recovered from customers, but over a much longer duration. All of that is agreed with Ofwat as the water regulator. So there's always this healthy sort of healthy competition between us wanting to invest more because we want a resilient and sustainable way of abstracting water and providing services to customers. But at the same time, it is a negotiation for us being able to maintain bills for customers at the most affordable. So when we come up with those plans, we have to demonstrate to Ofwat they're the right plans, and there's a whole bunch of clever people that can argue that from operations, from an engineering capability, but there's a whole other team lens that looks at going through, we call it willingness to pay, so are customers willing to pay for that extra service, but then also affordability, can our customers afford to provide that service? And we'll come back to the question around some of the customers that might need more support. We do have a number of different tariffs, some that are in place already, some that we've had some trials for that we can touch upon, and I may call on Richard just to support me in answering some of those questions. Is that okay as a sort of I appreciate that's a very summary answer.
Yep, absolutely.
And
Great.
you're probably at the extent of my knowledge have been able to go any further, in truth.
Thank you.
Councillor Hode?
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. The first is to do with this, what you're showing here is your planned investment in improving the network infrastructure, which makes perfect sense, efficiency, resilience, etc. None of that appears to be happening in the eastern part of Surrey Heath, so it doesn't directly impact us. But from a practical point of view, for people on the ground in those areas where it is happening, what does this actually mean? Does this mean digging up and putting in wider water mains or new mains? What does this actually look like in practical reality?
So for the Surrey Heath customers in particular, sorry, if I press the right button, I think I'm on. We have just under 1 kilometre of mains renewals that is in a detailed design phase in the Cobham area. So there is some minor investment going in. That is to replace a water pipe. It's a 4-inch distribution pipe, so it's nothing particularly significant in terms of how it moves water. So I mean, the way that our investment is targeted will be based on a whole series of asset modelling. So we will understand when the water infrastructure was put into the ground or above the ground. We will look at things like its failure rate, its replacement age, etc. So the reason that there isn't a significant amount of investment in this particular part of the world is because their needs are simply greater elsewhere. So, for example, when we do our mains renewals investment, we will look at asset failure rates over the course of the asset life, and we will be looking at to respond to assets that have already failed. So, for example, if a length of pipe fails 5 times per kilometre per year, that would be elevated through for immediate replacement. At the same time, we've got some very clever people that do sort of asset management that will then look at, well, where else do we have assets that are made of the same material, that are laid in the same types of soil corrosivity, and all of those clever things to sort of to try and do some predictive modelling. In terms of sort of things that customer will see, smart metering, because we've already done the bulk of the original metering programme, the majority of our metering programme this time around is simply a screw out and screw in of a different type of technology. It doesn't need a different, we call it a meter pit or a stop tap. It doesn't need that. So this time around a lot less intrusive. There were a lot more digging in which is quite intrusive because it's outside someone's customer property. Mains renewals is probably some of the most intrusive work that we do because we can be on site for some time. So if a resident is going to have a mains renewal, we might be outside their street for weeks at a time, albeit we do try to take the water with us, we call it. So we will try to dig a portion of road, lay the pipe, and then backfill and reinstate that as we go. So it's not the same set of customers, but we can be there for some time. That said, those sorts of things, we're talking planning at least 2 years in advance. So there's a lot more opportunity for us to engage those customers to explain what we're doing and why. Probably one of the most challenging areas that we face is probably in leakage repair activity. So we do a huge amount of work to find leakage. Often customers don't know that we're in their area to do that, and therefore when the barriers then go up, often we've only had sort of days to be able to communicate with customers. In some cases, it is reactive. So in some cases, if a main has failed, we will send the cavalry, and we're relying on sort of customer teams to do text messaging, all of those good things sort of afterwards. So it really is a real mix. Some of the bigger stuff that Ilias is talking to around larger scale investment will happen sort of behind fences, behind closed doors.
Thank you. And my second question relates to what you were talking about a little earlier on demand forecasting. And one of the things mentioned was increased water demand expected as a result of AI and the buildings infrastructure. Now, I will put my hand up and go, I don't know the first thing about this, but I would have thought that if you're using water for presumably cooling purposes, that it would be recycled and cooled and recycled, so it wouldn't actually increase demand for water consumption, but I presume I've not understood correctly. So
we had a 30-minute conversation at our executive leadership team meeting this morning this afternoon on the impact of data centres. But Ilias, do you want to give the correct answer?
Obviously, there is recycling that can happen at a data center. It depends on the footprint. It depends on what is possible on site, the volume that they would use, and where that water would go to. Would it be discharged to the environment after it has been recycled a couple of times, or would it be go down the sewer effectively? So it won't be lost as such, apart from some evaporative losses and so on. The resource is there, is just that it will return somewhere at a different quality. And therefore, that end-to-end aspect is being looked at by the regulators to see how that can be sort of authorized, if you like, and what the fate of that water will be. Now, we are clean water only, so we receive such applications to connect to prospective data centers. So we have a say on that aspect. We don't have a say on the other end, but there's a huge discussion that has started with the regulators as to if these aspects are mandated, AI data centers, then we need to have a say as to where the water goes and what happens with that water. Can it be re-abstracted if it is put to the environment, and so on and so forth? Can it be treated, and so on and so forth?
Okay, but they're not entirely closed loop systems, like once the water's in, it goes round and round and never leaves. Thank you.
My understanding, again, I'm not an expert on AI, but there's certain volume that can be recycled. How many times can you recycle it before it actually needs to go down the sort of the sewer and so on? So because it will pick up minerals, the water will precipitate, it is being heated up and so on. So there's certain aspects that will change in the chemistry. There's also a discussion around, do they need potable water for cooling necessarily, or other water, non-potable? So there's a whole debate that is taking place now, and but it is something that is sort of expanding. Thank you.
Councillor Cope.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation so far. It's been very informative. I just had a question around sort of the principle of sort of moving water from out of your area. How do you secure that for the long term? Because presumably, just because, for example, Birmingham may have a surplus of water now, how do we know it's going to have a surplus of water in 15 years? And are you entering into an agreement with the water company whose patch that is? And sort of how does that work? Just a little bit more background around that.
Yes, obviously the source of that water needs to be sustainable from an environmental perspective. So the Environment Agency will have a say. Where is that water going now? The attractive thing about the source of this water is that because it comes out of the wastewater treatment works, it is guaranteed, in inverted commas, in a drought. So because it is dry weather flows actually, it is guaranteed. So it's always there in a drought, equivalent to 1 in 200 severity that we're planning for. The second question is, if you're taking it from an existing water body, i.e. where it is going now, do you cause a deficit in that water body? And the answer for that is no, because there is surplus water in that water body, and obviously the Environment Agency have to consent that the water will now be diverted, not all of it, some of it, from where it currently goes to the canal through the treatment process. So the other aspect that will have to be consented is the water quality element of the discharged water to the canal. Although it is not potable, obviously, in the canal, it's going to be treated to a higher standard, so treated again, if you like, from its current treatment, because the current treatment is designed to go to the particular water course with a particular dilution ratio, and so on and so forth. So when you take it to a new water course, like the canal, you have to demonstrate to the regulator that you're not causing deterioration in the water quality, in any species that live in the canal, and so on. So there's lots of hoops that we have to jump to make sure that we're not causing a problem somewhere else. Pay Peter to, rob Peter to pay Paul, basically.
I was just going to add, and to your point, and there are contracts entered into that revolves through the regulator as well. So we have to answer to, there's a whole separate governance structure that sits alongside our existing regulatory framework that looks at existing bulk supplies and agreements, but also future bulk supplies agreements. They are quite common across the industry. So one of the largest pieces of infrastructure this outlet started was so Portsmouth Water are building the Havant Thicket, I might have got that wrong in terms of pronunciation, reservoir, but Southern Water almost the sole beneficiary of that. Just on the map, you can see sort of on the top left-hand side where it says Grapham. That's actually an existing bulk import of water that we have from Anglian Water. So we can take, on average, 95 million litres a day, up to 105. So it's about 10%, and that's been the case. Likewise, from our Egham treatment works that we spoke about, where this area is served, we also export water there to South East Water as well. So we do that planning through the Water Resource Group. So we have Water Resources East and South East that sit, I won't say on top of, but alongside the water companies to facilitate that longer 75-year out planning in terms of water supply.
Right, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I've also got two questions. First one, forecasting. I'm guessing, obviously, some of it's seasonal, I get that, and obviously you know how many houses and businesses, etc. So the increase, I'm assuming, will be an increase of businesses, of new building estates and housing estates. Is that correct, and is there anything else that you need to consider when you're forecasting the use of water?
So there is forecasting for household and non-household. So we're looking at the businesses and the households. So it is critical that we get the information from the councils at the time where we say, what are your plans? So it's kind of a bottom-up approach, if you like. Now, we have to build some uncertainty in that, because sometimes we don't have the exact number, we have a range, or we have a time scale that may sort of slip. So effectively, we have to take that information from councils, and consultants do this for us, then do some sort of low, medium, or high growth scenario on that, and have a lot of error bars, if you like, on each one of those to make sure that we capture both the household and the non-household demand with a forecast for each one of them. Now, the Water Resources Management Plan is dealing with a middle growth scenario. If materializes that in the first 5 years, because we have to do this every 5 years, so new demand forecast every 5 years. So if we missed it, say, 5 years ago, we have to do it again. But in the meantime, we have an adaptive pathway, or several adaptive pathways, if you like. So if we demonstrate to the regulators that we now are working against a high growth scenario instead of middle growth scenario, we can jump onto that, and that has a certain sort of set of things that we have to do to make sure that we're working on the right pathway. So effectively, you always have a forecast, an envelope. We are working against the middle growth, but we can jump onto each pathway depending on where we're at and how we can evidence it.
Thank you. My second question, now it's in this presentation, but it's mentioned leakage. Do I want to ask, wait till the head of leakage comes on?
I think we'll deal with leaks.
But it's in this part of the
Is
presentation,
it?
which is why yeah.
All right.
Because
Well,
it's part of your forecast, but I will come back to it.
we'll have a leakage section. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I've got about 7 questions, so if you want to pause me partway through them.
Are they on what we've done on this?
Yes. So I think the first bit is the openness and honesty in the presentation, which was greatly appreciated. So being upfront with the chalk stream percentages and the fact that you're in a stressed water area and the volumes of water is really appreciated. So thank you. I think compared to Thames Water, you're kind of already up here, so appreciated. Thank you. And you can tell your Thames Water acquaintances that as well. So the first question is centred around standpipes. So obviously we've seen an increase in members of the public reporting vehicles just turning up with standpipes that are silver in colour with a tap on the top. Now, my understanding is that's not a normal standpipe. So how does that kind of policing piece work? Because that's basically nicking our water.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we do have, it was used to be called the Hydrant Licensing Team. It has a new name, and they will, an enforcement team. So it is an unauthorised usage enforcement team. Thank you. Yeah, it is a problem for us. Normally what you find is it is relatively short-lived in terms of the impact, but you would be very surprised as well in terms of the types of people that we find that do take water illegally. So some of the key things that we would find are people connecting to our water network illegally is a very big problem from a water health perspective. If you can think, we go through all sorts of different procedures to make sure the pipes that we use, the partners that we work with, our own people are trained to the right standards. There's a whole series of regulations around making sure anything that comes into contact with water has the right approvals, and people can and do connect to the network illegally. So we do have a whole team that is looking to enforce those, and we have gone as far as prosecution in some cases. We would call them a standpipe. It's the silver thing that you referred to. So across the network, you will have what we call washouts or fire hydrants, effectively the same thing. One's used for firefighting purposes. We use ours for effectively mains conditioning. All of our standpipes will have what we call a double check valve, so it will prevent any water from getting back into the network. And yes, illegal hydrant use, there is the potential that people would not use them. But we even find people that think they have done all the right things because they may have a licence to use a Thames water hydrant, for example, and then sort of come across into our area. They're not aware they've moved into the Affinity area. So often, actually, when we challenge people, they'll say, "Yeah, I've got my certification," only to find that it's not. It's relatively inexpensive to get a licence. It's about £150 or something in that magnitude. So we would encourage people to apply for a licence. We would rather encourage people to do that and do it the right way. But we do have enforcement teams that go out to respond to, and in some cases where we can identify illegal use. We employ about 100 what we call customer service technicians in my part of the business. James, you've probably got the same again in leakage technicians, same again in meter readers, the same again in water samplers, etc. So we do have an army of blue vehicles out. You'll see us out and about in our blue vans with our ducks on the side. They are all trained in terms of what to look for in terms of usage, questions to ask, and like I say, we've got someone they can take it back if they need to.
Thank you. So my next question is around smart meters. I think Councillor Julie's covered quite a lot of what I wanted to say. It's always the benefit of speaking later. People come up with great ideas. In terms of being able to drive by meter read, that's pretty cool, right? So how does that work in terms of the customers? Because we all know those experiences of the customer who has an on-premises leak and then ends up with a large bill. what thoughts are there around the drive-by meter reading and obviously the proactive reporting back to start detecting and working with customers with those leaks proactively to help reduce their costs? If you want to back that from meters into leaks, I'm happy to ask the question later. I don't want to break into leaks yet.
Other stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, smart meters do come with an option of, because we've got that data more frequently, and the meters themselves, a lot of the technology does have what we call a continuous flow alarm built within it. So if it does see continuous flow over a certain period of time, it is able to flag that up. So we are working on our back office and data management systems in order to be able to capture the data from the smart meters, to be able to then identify where we've got continuous flows, and then be able to put out proactive comms to customers of where they do have problems. So it's an area I'm heavily involved in working on. So we tried to split these up into kind of 4 buckets where you've got really big problems where we might need to send a technician immediately to a person to try and assist them, through to you might just need some information, help and assistance that we can then offer you. So yeah, it's going to offer a great opportunity to be able to detect those issues sooner. Existing what we call dumb meters, where we read them just once every 6 months and that's all you know is the read at that time, offers nothing until the customer gets a bill, which then looks large and they question. So it really is going to open the opportunity for us to have conversations with customers as things happen with them, to identify, and then our other challenge is then making sure we give that customer the support and the information that they need to resolve those issues, because that's one of the other problems I frequently find is customers don't know how to resolve things like supply pipe leaks and internal plumbing leaks.
Sorry, if I can just add to that as well. So one of the future sort of developments coming up as well is we will be launching a new customer app in the next, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's in our next phase of our customer transformation program. So sort of 6 to 12 months, those sorts of time scales. We've just relaunched our website, but the app is sort of the second part to the smart metering program. Smart metering gives us the technology to understand customers' usage. We will benefit from that greatly as Affinity Water. The app will give us the ability to have smarter and better conversations with customers and provide them that information. In the same way, if you were an Octopus user and it's very easy to interact with the app, your usage, trends, etc. I won't say we aspire to be Octopus, we aspire to be even better. But it's that sort of type of conversation we want to enable with customers.
The next group of questions kind of look more towards national incident contingency. So I wanted to look east from Poland, from Germany to Poland, where obviously they've just sent out a national handbook in terms of how to cope in a sort of quite serious emergency. So we're talking about loss of power, loss of water, major attack. So I wanted to kind of have a little bit of explore around resilience and redundancy within network infrastructure. So my first question was obviously looking at the Grand Union Canal project. That looks quite exciting, but obviously we've just had the Llangollen Canal incident. So talk me through your thoughts around that and the risk management around that, because obviously canal is a relatively easy piece of infrastructure to damage, whether it be by accident or by intent.
I can take some of that. So firstly, reservoir or storage safety protection is again another set of regulations that we work to. So through the Environment Agency, actually, reservoirs or storage assets have different classifications. So we will have a number of storage assets that is either based on the volume of water that they hold and therefore the risk that they pose in terms of flooding, or what is immediately downstream of them. And they go through a different, very rigorous set of checks and inspections. So a category A, for example, might require us every 10 years or 5 years, or whatever each reservoir or asset will be different. It will require us to have an independent structural engineer and structural survey that happens on it. So when I talked about Sunning Hill Reservoir, for example, or Black Hills Reservoir, they will have been drained, cleaned, inspected by a structural engineer. We have a reservoir engineer that then writes an independent report, submits that through to the Environment Agency. So there is a whole process by which we ensure ourselves that the assets are structurally sound. Actually, we go one step further than that. We have a risk-based approach so 10 years is the backstop. We actually deploy a 5, 7 or 9 year inspection frequency based on our own internal guidance, which is a little bit more strenuous than that. In terms of sort of national incident and response, that's something a little bit different. Do you want me just to touch on sort of give an overview of the structure, and you can tell me whether that's sort of hitting the mark or if it's not. So within Affinity Water, we have our own emergency planning team that sits within my directorate. That talks to different what we call bronze, silver, and gold response levels based on a number of different scenarios, ranging from a loss of fuel if there was to be a fuel strike, an asset failure should there be an asset failure. We did an exercise this year, actually, in the last 2 months on with the fire brigade on what that would look like if it was our Harrow reservoir had failed, for example. Within that, we have a different incident level response and structure. So we follow the JESIT principle, so we can align to the emergency services, because often we do engage with them. So bronze, silver, gold is the language that they would use. Separately to that, and then alongside that, we have, as an industry, through Water UK, a number of different sort of incident structures that we set up. So the first is what we call NIM, which is the National Incident Management Team. That is effectively all of the emergency planning leads from all of the water companies will sit on that. If there is an incident, firstly, there's a whole series of proactive meetings they will have to monitor risk across the industry and respond to that. If there is any incident that happens that impacts 3 or more water companies, we stand up what's called PIM, which is the Platinum Incident Management Group. So this weekend, for example, with the issues that South East are facing, actually South West and Yorkshire also had similar issues. PIM was stood up, so us as a group of operations directors come together and we effectively deploy the industry incident management response, which is effectively looking at what are the resources needed for those companies to be able to restore supplies or to return to a business as usual state, and then effectively deploy a series of mutual aid agreements to provide that. So, for example, we haven't had any widespread customer impact through the recent weather, but we have deployed 10 of our people this evening down to South East Water through that process. There were 8 of our colleagues out last night with South East Water manning their bottled water stations, for example. But that could range anything from a shortage of a chemical that the industry uses. So, for example, there was a chemical last year where 2 manufacturers of that chemical, one of those had an incident, which means they couldn't supply. That didn't impact Affinity Water. We were with the second supplier, but the industry will stand up. They will look at the overall industry needs, and then we will redeploy. So we will accept not taking our chemical delivery because we've got, let's say, 12 days of storage of that chemical, and we might give that to, say, a Thames Water if they've only got 2 days, for example. So there are different incident structures that would sit up. Alongside that, we work with what we call the local resilience forums. So we operate with 7 different LRFs, they get called, across our supply area. So there will be one for Surrey, for example, normally chaired by the fire brigade or the police. So again, if we were to have a major incident impacting, for example, the Surrey area, we would call for the support of the local resilience forum. Likewise, when Heathrow had their fire, for example, we would have been called onto that local resilience forum to provide our support, to provide guarantees that we can meet the water for firefighting. So there is a whole series of sort of incident management responses that stand up. Ultimately, they feed through into COBRA at government level, and I'm sure South East are enjoying that at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to come back on a couple of questions around meters. You said that the vast majority are on a meter of some sort, whether that's the older dumb sort or the new smart meters. How many households, or sort of as a percentage, sort of roughly, are still uncapped, no meter at all? And how, well, obviously you can't tell how they're using, but you were mentioning the sort of average, I think it was 12% reduction once a smart meter went in. How do you get to that figure if you're not sure what the household is using?
Do you want to touch on detail? Do you want me to have a go, and then you can correct me?
Yeah.
So I would say about 85% of our customers are metered, different in different regions. So over in our Clacton region, for example, they are almost entirely metered. The reasons the customers wouldn't be metered, for example, they might be on shared supplies, for example. There may be engineering difficulties that mean we can't put a meter onto that property. So they would have all had a survey or an attempt to install a meter. But they're the reasons why we can't, or they may not have been cost beneficial to install a meter. in those circumstances. I mean, the data where we talk to about the savings, they compare like different types of scenarios. So you may have a customer that's already got a meter, either a dumb meter or an automatic meter read, moving to smart. They obviously will have already had a percentage of those benefits. So 6%, 7% of the benefit of being metered may already be, we may have already sort of received. And then it will be the last few percent when they move to a smart meter, because we can now have the conversations with them. In terms of, sort of how we derive the figures that we use, that's more of an industry-led piece of work. So it's more industry research from where other companies have got large metering programs. Some have gone a few years ahead of us, so we're able to sort of gain the benefit of what they've learned from their different meter customers' metering journey. Do you want to add anything else?
That's pretty much it. So the thing that we find is that those that are unmeasured have very high consumption. So it is getting those customers from unmeasured to measured and then to smart meter straight away. Effectively, they don't have to go through the conventional measured. But there will be some easy wins, as James mentioned. The continuous night flow, for instance, it will detect wastage. So there's certain things that can be done and very easily identified with a smart meter. And there is quite a lot of evidence out there from other companies that 10 to 12% is there. Therefore, we are assuming that percentage will apply to us as well. There is an element of demographics, of course, when you're looking at different areas and so on and so forth, but we're talking with neighboring water companies where there isn't huge difference in demographics, so we're assuming the benefit will be similar.
And then, sorry, if I could just add as well, one of the things we haven't touched upon, at the point that we deploy a smart meter, we also deploy what we call a home water efficiency check as well, so the water meter doesn't sort of land cold. There's obviously the communication with customers of a meter is coming and why, and there's a customer journey that talks to that. But part of that customer journey is we would also, a technician would spend time with that customer to help them understand how to use water efficiently, etc. So we're trying to enable the conversation and give customers the information they need to be able to use smart. So simple things like a piece of toilet paper on the back of the toilet bowl will very quickly identify if you've got a leaky loo. Little things like that often go unnoticed, but aggregated actually use a lot of water.
That's great, thank you. It's interesting you're just saying about how in places that it's uneconomical or unpractical to install a meter. I think my mum's in that situation. She said that someone came out and it wouldn't fit in the, what do you call it, the pit or something like that. So how does that, and I think she was a bit, or she lives on her own, doesn't use a lot of water, and she was, how do the bills get calculated for those uncapped or unmetered customers?
There are different bills for measured and unmeasured. Again, I don't know categorically, so I'd rather come back to you with the actual answer if I may. But ultimately, if a customer, if we've tried to meter that customer, the customer has requested a meter, and we haven't been able to, then they do move on to a different tariff, as opposed to just being an unmeasured customer in that regard. And my in-laws are in the same position as well. So we will do what we can. We won't just look at that pit outside. We do look to do internal installs as well, and other solutions. I think what will happen is over time technology will move forwards, and we'll forever be able to eat away at sort of the last 5-10% of our customers that don't have a water meter. In the meantime, there are different billing journeys based on metered, unmetered, attempted metered, etc. I'll be doing you a disservice if I try to answer it, but I will come back if that's okay with the actual answer.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
I think what we'll do is we'll finish the presentation now, okay, and get on to leakages and all the other tariffs and things.
Would you like me to touch on the rest of the slides on the water resources status, or are we? Yeah, we'll go through the remainder. Okay, well, first of all, if we stay on this slide then, specifically for Surrey Heath, sort of some numbers there that you see. So the demand for the zone, the Way community, is about 145 megalitres. These are numbers straight out of our WMP24. The licensed capacity is 207. We've already mentioned most of this water comes from the River Thames. There's direct river abstraction. There is surplus water in the zone, up to 45 megalitres, and we plan to move that northwards to the neighboring zone, water resource zone 4, by 2030. So that will require network reinforcement. We touched about that, new boosters, pipes, and so on to move that water north. No additional groundwater abstraction is planned to take place, as the Environment Agency, as the regulator, is capping our abstraction licenses, basically saying you're not allowed to take more than what you have historically taken. So that is for sustainability reasons. Next slide, please. In terms of how we measure the health of our water resources, our abstraction licenses on the River Thames are not bound by any drought conditions because we're relatively a small abstractor from the river. Just to give you a comparison, we take 400 megalitres from the River Thames combined. Thames Water take 10 times that, 4,000 megalitres or more. So they have the onus to maintain minimum flows in the River Thames at all times, whereas we can abstract up to our licensed capacity. So our groundwater sources are linked to the background fluctuation of the groundwater levels within the aquifer. The main aquifer is the chalk aquifer we're talking about here. So we have a number of groundwater sources, so boreholes going down at variable depths, but typically no more than 100 meters, where we abstract the water. So those levels do fluctuate. As you see there, the top line is where we are now. We went through sort of 2025, which was quite dry, or exceptionally dry actually, overall, but because we started from a flood position the winter before that, the recession brought us to around about just above average levels at this point in time, and we have some projections there. The colored zones that you see at the bottom are what we call drought trigger zones. So we define drought by the aquifer status as water levels get lower and lower, and this is primarily driven by the lack of winter recharge. So if we don't get enough rainfall during the winter months, where the aquifers are normally recharged, then we know the summer afterwards we're going to be in a lower position because groundwater levels always decline during the summer months and then they rise during the winter months. So it's a cycle, and that is kind of more predictable, if you like. So we do predictions for a 100% rainfall scenario, or 80%, 60%, to provide to the regulators and to our customers an update as to where we're going to be from now, so 6 months on, where we forecast we're going to be. And obviously these drought zones mean certain things for us. For instance, by drought zone 2, we would implement or consider implementation of hosepipe bans, or temporary use bans as we call them. So there's certain actions associated with those. Okay. We touched on that a little bit more, so as to when we would put out sort of temporary use bans. Obviously, we follow our drought plan. We talked about the water resources management plan up to now, but there is another statutory plan which is called the drought plan. It's mostly an operational plan, so it talks about how we will deal as a company with a drought situation. What are we going to do from the onset of the drought, and as we go sort of deeper into the drought, what are those specific actions that we'll take, how we'll communicate with customers, how we'll ensure that we'll do additional activities to make sure that the supply-demand balance is healthy. So we're in the process of producing our next drought plan. Again, it works on a 5-year cycle, but with annual updates. So in around about May of this year, we will go for a consultation of our drought plan, or a draft drought plan 2027. And effectively, we will explain the actions that we're going to take during a drought. So TUB is temporary use bans. This is mostly what people are interested in. It's one way of reducing demand at times when there is lack of resource or resources are low overall. So it's one of the things that we have under our belt. Then if you escalate that, we go on to non-essential use bans, which starts affecting businesses and so on. And then sort of drought permits or drought orders, which is sort of the other end of the spectrum, emergency supplies effectively on that. And then if all of these have been exhausted, we transition to the emergency plan that Anton talked about earlier. So there's a number of things that we go through. Now, when we put a hosepipe ban, obviously we will have to consider the supply-demand balance in the region and also the water resource zone, as we split the areas into water resource zone, because of the connectivity in our central region that we want to enhance even further through moving water from one zone to another. It is likely that temporary use ban will apply to the whole of the central region, so that the messaging is the same for customers and it's not sort of split per water resource zone as such. Obviously, we have some of our customers on the priority services register, so some of these customers will be automatically exempt in the event of a tub, and this is all included in both our current plan and our new plan. Shall we move on to the next slide is just a QR code for if anybody wants more information. There's a QR code that takes you to the website with all the documents. So I'll stop here and then.
Let me touch on performance very briefly. I'd rather James get a chance to talk about leakage. Overall, Affinity Water is a strong. Oh, sorry, you might get used to that. Sorry. Apologies, everyone. I might get used to it by the end. We obviously manage performance, as you can imagine, in a whole number of ways at all different levels. At the most strategic level, we have what we call our performance commitments. They often get called outcome delivery incentives or ODIs. These are what we agree through the business plan. They're effectively strategic level performance indicators or levels of service that we commit to achieving for our customers, effectively in return for the level of investment that we've been given, i.e. what customers will ultimately pay for in their bills. That changes every business plan every 5 years. So in the last 5-year period, we had 28 different performance commitments. This time round, we have 16 performance commitments. They range from, in the last AMP, they were some financial, some reputational. This time round, they are all, I believe, I think I'm right in saying, they are all now financial performance indicators. So outperforming, some have an outperformance payment, most don't. Most are what we would call penalty only. And effectively, they represent what is important to customers. So supply interruptions, water quality, contacts for water quality, etc., are all types of performance commitment that we have. Ofwat have just published their overall report in terms of a league table, in terms of where all of the water companies sit. We were in second place. We've just moved up to joint first place. So we have some issues, just to be very clear. There are some areas where we don't excel, but in the mix and the round, we do fairly well. So just calling out a couple. I won't go through it in detail, but things that can matter most to customers. Mains repairs is effectively a measure of asset health. So are you investing enough in your water infrastructure, or are you having, i.e. mains renewals, or are you having an increase in burst water pipes ultimately, because they can be very disruptive when they happen. The last sort of 10 days that we've just been through in the weather doesn't help, but we are on track to deliver our mains repairs performance commitment, and we have done previously. Quite dependent on the weather. As a general rule in the water industry, we don't like any form of weather that's not grey and drizzle. We don't like it hot, we don't like it cold, we don't like it windy, we don't like most rain, we like some rain, etc. It all has different sort of connotations for how the aquifers recharge, but how dirty the water is that they take in, etc. Low pressure is a commitment overall that we do very well on. We do have a particular problem at the moment with a large non-household user in the Wembley area that's taking a whole load more water than they used to. That's dragging the pressures down in that area. So we need to do some investment to upsize some of the infrastructure. In this area in particular, we suffer sometimes around some of the big events like Wentworth, for example, Ascot, etc. We do have small pockets of customers that when large users do take a lot of water, that can have some low pressure issues. So I would be lying if I said low pressure isn't an issue at all. But overall, compared to the performance commitment we are doing very well. Similarly, for interruptions to supply, we add up all of the interruptions. So if a customer has no water, you add up all of those incidents that happen, you multiply how many people were impacted, for how long, you divide it by the number of properties you serve, gives you an average supply interruptions measure. Again, you can see we're doing very well against that measure despite some of the challenges. There are other measures, water quality measures, environmental measures, things like serious pollution incidents, things like discharge permit compliance. So things that you see in sort of in the headlines around water companies, discharging illegally, etc. They are performance commitments that measure those, and again, we are pretty green across the board in terms of performance overall. Just to touch on, so again, just so it's transparency, probably our two biggest areas of focus are what we call CMEX, so our customer experience measure, making sure we deliver a fantastic service for customers. Companies in the southeast do tend to have lower CMEX scores. We have a very large, well-funded customer transformation program to try and turn the dial around customer service, customer experience. And then the other is what we call PCC, so per capita consumption. So customers, again, in the southeast of England, on average, use more water. So it is on another slide somewhere, I won't try to find it. It's about, our customers use on average about 155 litres per person per day, compared to an industry average of about 137, there or thereabouts. Don't quote me on the exact number. So the campaigns, things like smart metering, things like home water efficiency checks, things like having big blue vans with ducts and giving water efficiency messages are all part of our demand reduction sort of strategies to try and help customers understand how to use water more wisely. Thank you.
Gets the interesting bit, leakage. Very basically. Okay, so yes, I am responsible for leakage, and it follows on from what Ilias was talking about. So the water resources management plan, the demand section sets out how our water is distributed, where is it going, etc., and how we're going to look to control that to meet the supply-demand balance. So I really am the next step in the leakage element of that supply-demand balance. So in the WRMP, we set out what our ambitions are on our leakage to help that balance, and then it's my role to try and turn that into realistic plans of how we're actually going to deliver that. What are we actually going to physically do to make sure we achieve that the trajectory? And Anton mentioned earlier, we've got a commitment to cut leakage by 50% by 2050. That is around about 90 million litres per day in real terms, and would cover effectively an equivalent population of nearly 1 million additional people in our area. It's a very ambitious plan to do that, chop that in that timescale, and we are trying to tackle it in a very aggressive manner. We are looking by the end of this asset management period, by 2030, to have done 31% against that 50%. So we'll hopefully be 2/3 of the way towards our target, approximately, in 1/3 of the time, because of all the pressures that we're under in terms of our supply-demand balance. So why does leakage happen? Ultimately, it is the point that the pipe in which the water flows through can no longer take the pressure with which that water is passing through that pipe. And that can come about by several different ways. That can be deterioration of the asset, through to it can be somebody digging a hole through it, which we do get.
Funny that didn't make the presentation.
So yeah, but ultimately it is the failure of that pipe. Just to quickly touch on Affinity's performance in terms of relative to the rest of the industry. Over the last two asset management periods, AMP6 and AMP7, we've had the largest percentage reduction of any water undertaker in both those periods. Again, it goes with that aggressive nature. We're trying to reduce our leakage because of the supply-demand balance. Next slide, please, James. So how do we manage leakage? There's actually only 3 ways you can manage leakage. The first one is what we call active leakage control. That is finding and fixing it. So this is existing leaks that are out there on the network. It's how do you find them and how do you repair them faster, shorten the length of time that leak will run. So it's a large focus area. It is one of the cheaper options in terms of managing leaking for customers' bills. So what we do is, to do that, we monitor our network daily, hourly in most cases. We've got our areas split into what we call district metered areas. We have around 1,000 of them, and we are constantly monitoring the flow of water into those areas. And what we do is we look at those areas and try and look to identify where there has been changes in those patterns of water usage. So the couple of graphs there are actually a couple of the DMAs in your area over recent times. The one on the left-hand side, there's a couple of points where you can see it step up. And what we've done then is some little dots on the top of that graph. That's where we then identified that there is an issue, there has a leak taking place, we've been out and repaired that, and then you can see the chart drop back down at the bottom. And then the one on the right-hand side, over the same period, you can see there's no steps up there in that bottom line, in the bottom of that line. So that's what we're doing on a continual daily basis, is looking for where we see change, those steps, and also deterioration over time, because leaks are not all what you see sometimes in photographs where you see the big explosion of water. They're only the small amount of actually what leakage is. A lot of it is hidden and we try to detect. So we have, as Anton said, we've got over 100 people permanently out there trying to find leaks across the network. In the last week, that has been very much a challenge with the weather we've had. We've seen significant impact in places with numbers of leaks increasing, and areas we are working and bringing that under control. So it's really how, in this area, it's how can we find those things faster and fix them faster. So we do a lot of innovation in this space. Anton mentioned it earlier. We use satellite technology. So there is a satellite which is orbiting the Earth, which is X-ray in the Earth, and it can detect where water occurs in the subsoil. It's the same technology they use to look for water on Mars. And so we contract that in from a supplier. They run a scan of our area. They line it up with where our network runs, and they're able to give us what we call points of interest, where we then deploy technicians out to those areas to try and find leaks. The next thing we're really looking into, and we are the largest rollout of use of the existing fibre optic network. So we're working with BT Openreach to utilise their existing fibre network. Fibre optics can detect sound, and leaks make sound. That's how most of leak detection works. It works off acoustics. So you can use that existing infrastructure that's there to determine where leaks taking place. The clever part is in the algorithms that determine it's not a car driving down the road or somebody walking, it's an actual leak. The technology is crazy. What fibre optics can hear is actually quite scary. But we've worked out that our network lines up, around 80% of our network lines up with BT Openreach's fibre optic network. So we're working to have basically a permanent switched on acoustic device across all our network. This is, let's say, it's really innovative stuff. We are the first company to roll this out at scale in England and Wales, and in fact in Europe. It's not really used in this way anywhere else. So again, that allows us to get points of interest on a daily basis where we can deploy those technicians. So we're always looking at how can we do that work faster? How can we find that leak faster and fix it in a quicker way? So that's one part. The second part you can do to manage leakage is pressure management. So the volume of a leak is proportional to the pressure in which it is under in the mains that it escapes from. So if you can control pressure, you can control the volume of water that's lost from that. It also has an effect of what we call calming the network. So we have a big project to calm the network down, which stops those big eruptive bursts, and it also prolongs the asset life of the main, so you don't have to renew the mains as soon as you would do. So around, I've looked in this area, around 88% of all properties in the Surrey Heath area are under what we call a pressure regime. So we do have pressure management valves out there, which are constantly varying and fluctuating to make sure that we hold pressure at a constant. What we don't want is pressure shooting up and down, because that creates the problems down the mains. We want to keep things nice and smooth and calm. So, a lot of this area is already under that pressure management regime. We do have a couple of small investments to make in this asset management period. That's optimization of some of the existing. So some areas where we have tall buildings, we've not been able to optimize the pressure in those areas, because obviously we've got to get the water up to higher levels. So we're looking at working with owners of tall buildings. Can we install booster systems in their buildings for them that we will maintain and operate for a period in order to allow us to control the pressure in the rest of the area for customers? And then the final way that you can control leakage is asset renewal. As Anton touched on earlier, in this area we do have a mains renewal scheme in Cobham. There has been a significant number of bursts compared to other DMAs. So that's been highlighted through our normal asset management processes, as that is an area that we do need to target and we do need to replace that main. So, and let's say those three things effectively go up in cost terms. So ALC tends to be the cheapest intervention you can make, followed by pressure management, then followed by asset renewal. So as you can appreciate, we are going in and digging up roads for long periods of time, and that's where costs come through. So as Anton previously said, we're investing £95 million in leakage reduction in this AMP to achieve an additional 11% of that 50% to get us. So we were 20% last AMP, 11% this AMP. And we're trying to obviously look at how can we invest in technology to best achieve that. Expanding pressure management where we can expand it. So we've got other programs in other areas. The smart meter program, again, is a really interesting one for me as well. In the UK, leakage, when we report leakage, we actually report what is losses from a water company's network plus what is lost from a supply pipe, which is a customer-owned asset. So we don't own that asset, but we're responsible for measuring it and trying to reduce the leakage on it. And that's where smart metering is really going to help us in that situation, because it's been very difficult to understand where customers do have leaks on their supply pipes until you get those bills every 6 months. Whereas if smart meters can tell us within days that a customer has a problem, not only are we then able to go in and intervene and help that customer resolve that leak, which reduces leakage overall, but also helps them with their bills as well. So I'm very excited about the smart meter rollout, and I don't care how aggressive it is, I want it more and more and more as fast as possibly can do. But yeah, the ultimate thing is to achieve that 31% reduction by the end of this AMP, 2/3 of our total ambition within a third of the time. But yeah, I can talk about leakage for ever and ever and ever. So, you are more than welcome to come to us and talk to us about leakage if you want to. If anybody would like to ever go out with a leakage technician, we do have leakage technicians in this area. We're very open to people coming along and going out for the day with some high vis on and show you what they do and how they do it, and hopefully you find us leak.
I was going to say the only ask is you have to find 2 leaks a day.
Yes.
Or you'll appear on James's spreadsheet for poor productivity.
But yeah, that's a very quick summary. Like I say, if you would like further information, please do get in contact.
Fantastic, thank you. Sorry. Apologies. Last couple of slides, I promise. Apologies. So just in terms of support that we provide to our customers. So the primary way that we identify customers that need additional support is by what we call our priority services register. We call them our PSR customers. There are different tiers that are within that. In some cases, it's customers who require additional security measures. So we have things like passwords set up in place. So if we go to speak to a customer, they can ask us to be able to recite a password that they've pre-agreed and we've got stored on a system. It might be customers that are unable to fetch water. So you'll hear lots about our sort of response plans require or rely on alternative water supplies. On bulk, we would do that through alternative water stations. We normally agree fixed locations. We take Arctic lorries of bottled water, and it does rely on people coming to us. For a priority services customer that's unable to fetch, we would make sure we hand deliver that bottled water to their doorstep, all the way through to people that are dependent on water, certain medical conditions, for example. And again, on the non-household side, different tiers again exist. So particularly around where organisations can't move their customers, hospitals, prisons, for example, would get a tier 1 status. They have a different level of sort of response. Overall, then, just in terms of our customer base, this was one of our prior performance commitments in a previous period. So lots of focus on trying to increase priority service registers. We currently have 226,000 households that are currently registered on our priority services register. That's been an increase of 162,000 over the last 5-year period. So quite a significant growth as we've looked to promote the services that we offer. I think one of the things we discussed about in terms of outcomes for today, sort of what we can do to help, what you can do to help, please do if you get the chance to inform people as well. Help us to tell customers about our priority services register customer. Often customers don't know, and rightly so, they haven't had to consider the impact of going without water, and therefore often what we find is during incidents we have a large uptake, but that can just mean they we're not proactive sometimes in terms of that delivery. So anything we can do to help customers identify any issues that they may have that we can support, we're absolutely looking to do. From a finance perspective and on some of the tariffs, we do have what we call our lift tariff. Apologies, I am just going to read to make sure I don't get this wrong. So the primary tariff that we run to support customers is what we call lift. It's a low-income fixed tariff. We have about 136,000 of our customers currently receiving support through that lift tariff, which again is an increase of about 67,000, so about 50% growth over the last 5 years. Through that, if they meet certain criteria, they can move on to that fixed tariff. So a standard is £143 or enhanced is £95. So again, there's different criteria that we can take customers through to support them through and get them on the right plan, the right tariff. We do have some future tariffs that we're looking at. We've just run a trial in our Stevenage area, which looks at again moving customers that are using lots of water onto higher rates once they start to use more water to subsidise people that are using less water. Again, all promoting the water efficiency messages. So far, it looks like a really good way of sort of having that conversation with customers and good benefits in terms of reducing demand. Like I said, we don't provide wastewater services to customers, but what we do is bill for those other companies that are within our area. So if you're an Affinity Water, Clean Water customer, you will be getting your Thames Water sewage bill or your Anglian Water sewage bill on behalf of us. So again, where possible, we look to line up with those other companies and make sure we are also providing any extra sort of discounts that those companies offer, we will automatically apply, so customers don't have to go to two separate places. If I can just move on to the next one, please. We have a couple of debt support schemes in place. So, I mean, obviously, helping customers is very important. At the same time, it's important that we do recover the revenues that we need to fund the programme. So, where possible, we will always work with customers that are in trouble to try and look at how can we get them on an affordable plan that works for both them and for us. So, our customers that are in most need, we do have what we call our crisis fund. So, if there are exceptional circumstances where customers cannot pay their water bill, there's a couple of examples on the slide. We do have programmes where we can look to clear those arrears, and our contact centre teams will help take customers through that. Our contact centres are in two places. Our head office is in Hatfield, up in a business park. We have a contact centre there. We also have a contact centre in Folkestone, which is that smaller region that we operate down in on the coast. So we have a contact centre down there as well. And then finally, we have the payment matching scheme. So again, if customers have fallen into arrears, we will look to match the monies that they put forward to recover those arrears. We will look to match to help customers move forward in terms of their repayment. And then finally, we have what we call the water short tariff. So this is looking at where customers sort of aren't using in excess of water out of choice, but they do have extra people that live in the property, medical conditions, more people that are in full-time education, for example. We have a water short tariff to make sure their bill is capped, so again they're not exposed to excessive water bills through that process. I'm just going to pause. I've got a colleague on the call. Richard, is there anything else I've missed that you would add? He may have had to drop off. I'm on my own. I'm flying solo. Okay. I appreciate you had some questions on that. Did you want to? That was our last slide. Overall, if I can take any questions, happy to.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions that I'll just ask. Are most water companies trying to reduce their leakage by 50%, or is it just something you're doing?
Yeah, we are. Sorry, James. Apologies. We work with an organisation called Water UK, which is effectively a body where all the water companies fit into. A number of the chief executive officers will be on the Water UK board, plus some independents. There were a number of effectively sort of big promises that group looked to implement. Things like halving supply interruptions was one, reducing leakage by 50% was another one of those industry commitments. What I will say is that sort of sits as an industry sort of commitment we are trying to make. Each company will then have their own 5-year business plans that they are looking to implement, their own 75-year water resource management plans, etc. So different companies will be on a different path necessarily to achieve that. James, anything you'd add based on, I mean, there'll be industry forums you sit on, won't there?
Yeah, so as Anton said, there is a national ambition, but it's then down to each company to determine, based on their water resources management plan, how much of that they think they need to implement and where and how fast they think they need to implement.
Thank you. My other question was, the South East Water say that their leaks were partly due to the cold weather. And what I don't understand is because, A, we have cold weather quite a bit, and B, because the pipes are right under the ground, how that affects them, the cold weather.
James has probably got a thesis on this.
It is a really interesting question. There isn't a definitive answer. We do see the correlation between cold weather and increased bursts on our network, and there are a number of theories that exist out there around. Obviously, you say the pipes are at depth. We don't live in Russia and have permafrost and things like that. But, you know, the temperature of water that comes off of things like surface works and goes through the network, how does that affect the materials in the pipe? There's also then things, you know, demands change in those periods. So, you know, we do get customers who wish to prevent freezing of pipes, so we see additional demands sometimes in those. So the way the network can operate can be very different in those periods as well. So we can see there's a correlation. There isn't a definitive proven answer yet, but that's what the industry is also working towards. So we have, we work with Water UK, and there's a research arm called UKWIR, UK Water Industry Research Group, where all the water companies work together on common problems and try to fund research into those common issues to try and come up with answers about how we might do things differently. How can we understand this? So we you know, in this situation, we all contribute our burst data to a central database that allows academics to interrogate that data to try and understand what might be happening. So we can see there's a definite correlation. I don't have a definitive answer of exactly the mechanics. I think it's multiple things that are playing in those situations.
And then, sorry, just if I can just add, because again, maybe perhaps another ask is, South East will certainly be suffering, as we are and all other sort of companies, a large portion of leakage, when we talk overall leakage numbers, will be on customer side. So, you know, any messages that you can help sort of get to customers ahead of sort of cold weather periods around lagging your pipe work, after sort of freeze-thaw events, checking pipe work, etc. The beast from the east was a few years back, was particularly challenging because it happened over Christmas. So what happened was we had a lot of leakage on customer premises or business premises that weren't being returned to for a number of days, in some cases weeks. And that meant we took longer to recover. We will always support customers through that journey, but it is one that is a constant message for us to get across, is around, you know, looking after your neighbour, check on your neighbours, and being as prepared as you can be.
Right, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for your presentation, very informative, and thank you for all the stats to go home and read. So 2 questions. One goes back to the social tariff, the reduced bill tariff. Just to drill down about, is that means tested? Is that looking at whether the universal credit, etc.? That's question number 1, just to see how that's measured. And the second one. Obviously, all water companies deal with leaks in different ways, and I don't know how efficient other water companies are. But, for instance, if you see a leak on the A30 outside the RMA for 2 or 3 weeks, and having reported it by a borough councillor, a county councillor, and many residents, how is it that that still doesn't get fixed? And in my own ward, just before Christmas, there was a leak. It's not you. It's not Affinity, because I don't live in a ward with you. There was a leak, and it was reported, and it took 2 or 3 days for someone to come out, do their spray, and then fix it. I'd like to understand from your side what your response is, because you've got all this stuff that says that if there's a leak, you're going to be able to see it before actually you physically see it. So I'd like to understand how, when it's physically seen, it can take so long, or how long would it take for you guys to fix it?
It can depend. Whenever we go and find a leak, our leaks will come from two primary sources: detected leakage, which James' teams go and find, hopefully before customers are even aware, And then we do have either visible leakage or customer reported leakage. We will send technicians to those leaks to do what we call correlation, to try and pinpoint exactly where it is. All of the leaks are quantified where possible, so we will try to, either with data if we have it, because we will know on that graph how much it stepped up, or a visual inspection. Obviously then a risk assessment as well, where is the water getting to, what's the weather, is it going to freeze, etc. We carry a number of repair teams as standard. We do contract that resource out in some places with the ability to ramp up and down. Things like weather at the moment, for example, the whole industry will have gone out to try and maximise that resource. So in some cases, we are limited to just physically the capacity of work that we can get through. And therefore, there is a prioritisation process. So at different times of year, things like leaks will take different amounts of time for us to get to. We will always try to prioritise where we can. The other angle to that is we raise to work in the highway. To work in the highway, we need a permit, and we do that in a number of ways. So if it is deemed as urgent, i.e., damage, risk to property, risk to life, and again that's different at different times of the year. Freezing weather can be obviously a factor. We would, if it was particularly dangerous, we would actually start the work, and then we have until the next 8 o'clock the next working day, for example, to raise that. We would work very closely with Surrey Council on that. We have the Street Works department that work with them. We are held to account, and rightly so, closely on that. If it's not an urgent permit, i.e. a 2-hour response, it gets done under what we call a minor works permit, which is 3 days. So if the work's going to take less than 3 days, which most leak repairs are, normally you have to give 3 days notice. Now, Surrey Council will be very good with us as well, though. If we say it's minor, it doesn't need to be 2 hours, but we really need to get in tomorrow. They will work with us on that. So it's not quite as binary as that. Things that then need road closures, TTROs, etc., if they're not urgent, can take much longer. 12 weeks is the statutory period for a road closure. Now, again, just to be, that's sort of like the starting point. And always, in some cases, they may ask us, tell us that it needs to take longer. So, for example, if it's outside of a school, for example, they might ask us to wait until the school holidays, for example. It's normally a back and forth dialogue. They have their inspectors or their highways. If I say highways inspectors, I may get the term slightly wrong. Normally what we'll do is we'll start with a 12-week because it's on a main A road, etc., and we'll then look to negotiate. And they might say they want us to do it on a Saturday, out of hours. Normally leaks get fixed on a 3-day turnaround, so we normally dig on day 1, fix it, backfill it on day 2, and then on the 3rd day reinstate and take the barriers away. They may ask for same-day reinstatement, so on and off. Was the first example you gave, though, when you had a specific example, was that on ours? Because we'll get the actual answer.
No, it wasn't. It's all right, and it wasn't in the winter. It was in the summer, and it was on the main A road. So I take on board everything you've just said about.
Yeah.
It's just as someone driving past, based on what we're saying, and the fact of water leaking out. I'm sure we all know where I'm talking about. It was weeks. I say 3 weeks. I'm sure it was more than 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But based on what you've just said, that probably fits the criteria. If it's an A road, it would, etc. etc.
And let me change it again. Leakage can be really difficult because water will go wherever it can. Often, we care as much. What I would say is a water company, for all of those measures, we have performance commitments, personal bonuses, all linked to achieving all of these things. So there is no incentive for us to not fix the leakage quickly. So just please be assured that it's not I think people can often assume we don't care, we've outsourced that service, etc. It's really not like that. Also, at the time, particularly in the summer, we're often sending please use water wisely messages. Very difficult to land with ongoing leakage as well. We ask a lot of our customers to try and report leakage to us. It is on us then to make sure they don't, if they're going the dog walk past the same leak for the next 3 weeks when they're out walking the dog, etc. So we will try. We do sometimes have examples, though, where the water may be shown in a certain location. For us being a clean water company, sometimes it might be a blocked drain, it could be on a private side leak. There's a whole host of other things that can make it difficult. The vast majority are not, though, just to be clear. The vast majority go through the normal process. But please, if you've got any examples like that in our area, particularly, please do reach out and we'll at least explain the situation and say what we are doing about it.
Could I just reference the reduced bill tariff? Is it universal credit? Is it means test?
Income.
I'll come back to you. I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer. Yeah. I don't know, but if not, I can definitely come back. Thank you.
Councillor Hode?
Thank you, Chair. Roughly, leakage question. Of the total amount of water that you lose from your network, what percentage would you say is lost from leaks which are on your part of the distribution network versus leaks on a user's property or land or in their property?
Yeah, so overall in total leakage is around 15% of the total water we abstract is lost to leakage. And we have to try and measure how much we think is going through our side and through customers' supply pipes. And it ranges between 25% to around 30% of all water that is lost in total leakage is actually on the supply pipe, which is the asset that the customer owns. So again, it's data we publish on an annual basis as part of our water balance. We have to provide that to our regulator as well. So it varies year on year, depending on what's happened with weather, but that's the general aspect. It's between 25 and 30% is on the from customer supply pipes.
Councillor Hoff.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's been very, very interesting. Just starting on leaks, I'd love to come out and find some links with you. That sounds good. But just to learn a bit more about the new technology and the fibre sort of open reach agreement. So I'm assuming that's just where the open reach duct goes next to your water main, and it's using the existing fibres within the open reach duct, and they've got their monitoring or whatever that flags up. So in terms of the infrastructure, it's already there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we are using the existing BT fibre optic network. So as they expand that, more and more we can monitor. We do have to install a piece of technology in their actual exchanges, which then interrogates the fibre optics and pulls back the data that we need. So we do have to put some technology into their thing, but it's a small device like this that sits in an existing rack that they have in their system, and then it's just a case of connecting up the relevant fibre optic cables to it. So it really is utilising an existing asset that's already there, that's already been put into the ground, which makes it a great proposition.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sounds great. How far along is that programme? Is it live? If so, how much of the network is monitored in that way?
So we've gone into agreements with BT Open Reach, a company called Lightsonic. They do the clever algorithm in data interrogation. They've previously done it in the oil industry, so they're very experienced in it. We committed to going to 5 BT exchanges in our supply area, in our central supply area, with an aim of ending up with around 1,000 kilometres of our network being continually monitored by the end of March. So our total is around 17,000 kilometres.
17,000 kilometres of pipework in the round.
The total, so around 1,000. Like I say, it's the largest rollout of any fibre optic monitoring system. We're then obviously evaluating what's happening with those exchanges and what return we're getting, how it's working. It's developing continually because it is a new approach. With the view, then obviously we will then look, if it is successful in those 5 exchanges, look to expand that across further areas of our network. So at the moment, if my memory serves me right, we're in Walton on Thames, BT Exchange. We're in Ware, over in Hertfordshire. We are in Luton. We're in Hemel Hempstead and Chesham. So again, we've tried to choose different kinds of area, different kinds of our infrastructure. You know, how good is it against plastic mains versus metallic mains, etc. So we're really trying to trial it and test it. But so far, it's proving a really good, positive future development. And it will. We're now getting interest from lots of other water companies around the country who are really interested in, can they look at rolling this out in their area? And it could effectively change how we monitor that leakage on a daily basis, which is great.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. A large number of the people here today will be back here next Thursday at our planning committee. So it made me wonder, how tightly integrated are you guys into the planning system to make sure? Do you know in advance when major developments are coming to make sure you've got the right infrastructure that you can manage the capacity?
Yeah, we have a longer term Ilias's team, so the water resources team are looking at that a strategic outlook, and then we have what we call a developer experience team, which is a whole team within itself that is looking at so any new connections, right down to individual homes being split into two, but new developments, etc. So we will already have plans, designs, etc. years and years in advance. So we'll know, particularly at a strategic nature, they're joined, and they've got officers that will monitor I can remember the system we talked about it today again at exec. I apologise. The system had a special name that they used to look at those developments. So yes, but it's a sort of a BAU process for the team.
Councillor Lee.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I wanted to first sort of pick back up in terms of the national incident piece and looking at that. And I think there's a Ukraine flags snuck into your presentation quite interestingly. I think it's where the nice map is, and that kind of got me thinking around the real major incidents, so that kind of real DR BCP piece. And it's looking at, obviously, if you've got a critical incident and your surrounding areas have got a critical incident, where does that kind of start to land? Because there's a finite quantity of bottled water and those things. So it's just at a high level where things would land there and what kind of planning started. Because I think there was an interesting presentation from, I think, the head of the air services, which I think our local MP, who's part of the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, went to. And it was quite interesting to see their concerns around preparedness and readiness, and it's looking at where you are on that journey.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to build on the answer I gave prior, because that is the process by which we would go through. So that PIM structure, so through Water UK, is at any incident impacting 3 or more companies. That's where PIM would stand up. It has then a number of different groups that feed into it. One, so to give a couple of examples, the National Chemical Steering Group is one, and then alternative water, so bottled water effectively is the other. So that group will have live visibility of where all the alternative water is in the UK. So we will know how many water tankers each company owns themselves, how many water tankers are available through. There's only a few suppliers that do it. Water Direct are the main one. For example, we will have visibility of all the bottled water stocks, within our own patch, etc. There's a set of regulations called the Security and Emergency Measures Directive, SEMD, that governs our plans have to be able to, we have to have plans to be able to respond to our reasonable worst case scenario, or 1.5% of our population, whichever is greater. And then we have to have alternative water plans to be able to meet that level of response. In the instance, for example, that we couldn't meet, if it was beyond our reasonable worst case scenario, the first thing that we would do is through the mutual aid process, we would ask other water companies if they can support. If other water companies couldn't support because they had their own incidents going on, i.e. 3 or more water companies, PIM would stand up, and what it would do is, so that's the Platinum Incident Management Group then, they would, as a group, agnostic of their own water company, they would then look at all of the different scenarios, so how many customers are at risk of supply, and then they would take over, the Alternative Water Steering Group would take over the deployment of where that bottled water goes. So we may, for example, have some customers at risk, but if Thames Water had a greater need, a greater risk, through that process we would look to move water. I mean, ultimately, if that still wasn't sufficient to be able to then meet the demands, that is when we would pull through the local resilience forums or COBRA. We would have to call for effectively government support to bring in some additional resources. I'm not sure if I've answered that question fully or not.
That's been super helpful. How much water do you have in storage at any one point for the area? Because I think you mentioned there's about 1 billion litres a day are produced. You lose approximately 10%, so that means a usage of approximately 900 million litres. So it's looking at how much you've got in storage at any one time, average as opposed to peak.
Yeah, so we do, we meet our alternative water sort of requirements in a number of ways. So we comply with the SEMD regulations. That's audited independently by the Drinking Water Inspectorate. they audited our drinking water stores in either November or December last year. So about 56,000 properties worth of water we have the ability to supply. That is made up from what we call Arlington tanks. So it's a very unprofessional way of describing it, but it is like a large wine box, effectively. So it's a fold flat plastic container with a water quality approved bag that sits within that. They can they're 1,000 litres. They can be deployed full or empty. So we would either deploy them full from our works and then take them out, or more likely to happen, we would take them out empty and then use a water tanker to come and fill them up, and then refill. Bottled water, we have our main stores across in Tittenhanger. I don't have the exact. It will be on my laptop because we've got a live database that looks at it. We will have our main bottled water store at Tittenhanger, which is near our head office in Hatfield, and then there will be regional hubs of other bottled water: Rickmansworth, Staines, Luton, Stevenage, for example. And then we have a large contract with Water Direct, by which then they meet up the rest, either through bottled water or the provision of water tankers. In this 5-year period, we have funding to procure 4 water tankers ourselves as well. So we're in the middle of that procurement process. They're due to land next year. So the ability to provide 55,000 customers with 10 litres of water per day is what our plans are aim to achieve.
That's super helpful. So my next question was looking around the sort of the meter reading process. So obviously, one assumes the meters need some form of power.
Yes,
and that backhaul of data, is that using something like LoRaWAN, or are you using sort of vehicles tracking around to pick stuff up?
So it's a mixture of go for it.
So, the smart, focus on the smart meters. The smart meters is a LoRaWAN network. So the power supply is built within the meter itself. So it comes with a lifespan of that battery. We then go around and install a LoRaWAN network in an area. So that's a collection device that you might put up on a lamppost or up on a building, and the meters talk then locally to that gateway. That gateway then is also powered, which then will then send the data back through cellular network data. So that's how kind of that comms is managed, and the back, I say the power is embedded within the meter itself.
And then whilst we're on that journey, we equally then have teams that do drive past the AMR meters. So whilst that smart metering program is being rolled out, we do still have a mixture of dumb meters. So we directly employ some meter readers in our east and our southeast regions. They manually still lift the lid, read the number, and then we do. But the vast majority at the moment are AMR. So we do employ contractors to drive past and recover that data. So it's a bit of a mixture whilst we get onto whilst the smart rollout takes place over the next 10 years.
So there's one vehicle that goes past every single house every single week. That's a bin lorry. So I guess the question is, are you utilising those for that reading? Because that's the one guaranteed way of every property being reached.
We don't, and I've heard that asked before, and I don't know the answer why we don't, but we don't. But it is a very good idea. I'll have to remind myself why we don't, or why others don't as well.
I think they've started using it now for monitoring of mobile phone signal mapping through Ofcom, which is where I was kind of thinking with that, depending on where your scale of LoRaWAN is.
Yeah, this is our first iteration of what smart looks like for us, and it's the decision we made at the moment is to go down the LoRaWAN route. There are other options available that we are looking into. So NB-IoT is kind of another variation of this. There are power issues with that, again, longevity of the power. But as that develops, that might be another option that then opens up to us, because then you don't need collection devices. The meters will return on their own. So it's kind of a bit of a journey. We're not, LoRaWAN may not be what it looks like in 10 years' time as a smart meter rollout. So it's just what we're doing at this moment in time to get the ball rolling.
Councillor Rose.
This is possibly a naive question, but why are we drawing water from Egham? Have we looked at alternative sources that could be used? Obviously, there are huge capital constraints on having to bring it all the way from Egham. Is it possible to find other sources? I mentioned there used to be a source in Frimley Green, other sources that could be employed. And of course, there must be immense savings if you're able to find closer sources for Surrey Heat.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the sustainability argument. For every point of abstraction, we have to demonstrate that it is sustainable to take water out of the environment at that particular location. Now, for a river system like the Thames, that has multiple abstraction and discharges back to the main river, the ecology will need a certain amount of flow in order to survive in the river. So the where and the how much is effectively regulated by the Environment Agency. So we may have some ideas, but we have to run them past the regulator to ensure that it is sustainable and it passes the test effectively of the sustainability. But at the end of the day, it will be down to ecology, water quality, and river flow.
So would it have environment if you were talking about opening up a new source?
Absolutely, yes. And we'll have to secure an abstraction license. So for any volume that is taken out of the environment, whether it's river water or groundwater, that is more than 20 cubic meters a day, any abstractor needs a license. That is the legal document that allows you to abstract water from the environment. And then you need to specify the use, which obviously for us it will be public water supply.
Oops. I've got a quick question relating to your smart meters, and you did vaguely mention this, that once you've got the smart meters, will you then be planning to charge like different levels of rates, like you get in electricity sometimes, or all those sort of things?
I think customers that go from no meter to a meter in general, the consumption goes down, and therefore they're better off economically because they pay a lot less. They basically are billed based on their actual consumption. So that is there. Now with Smart, it will give us further information as to is there any wastage in there, and is there any additional savings that can be done, because the customer now can understand how much they're using at any point in time, and therefore see those additional sort of savings through the change in the behavior. So overall, there is an economical benefit for them, but there is also a saving that is expected for us. And by doing that, we'll be able to then tackle growth. Is that?
You wouldn't think of having like a if somebody uses more
we do. So we've also run a trial to it's either 10 or 12,000 properties in our Stevenage area, which was just a rising block tariff, so that for the first block of water is very cheap. I mean, there was conversations around, so we're trying to achieve a per person usage per day of about 137. On the extreme, you could actually explore, well, do you give the first 137 litres then for free, and then very excessively bill everything beyond then? Our rising block tariff isn't that extreme, but yes, we are trialling a rising block, so for every chunk of water, for every volume of water beyond the target, we would charge more water. We ran that for a period last year, maybe even the whole 12 months, to about 10 or 12,000 properties in the Stevenage area, and we have plans to now look to scale that tariff up, because it did both save money for customers, but also it did reduce demand quite effectively. So it's effectively our demand management is a three-pronged attack. Smart metering is all around the technology to enable us to understand water usage. We've then got a customer transformation program, is about having those conversations with customers through the app, etc. And then we've got the tariff piece, is then around setting bills to incentivise the right level of water usage while supporting customers that need it.
Right, final. I think we are drawing to a close, okay? I did so that you could ask one question. I mean, is it a very quick question, or?
I think so. It's related to tariffs. So things like electricity, obviously there's time of day changes in demand, and some electricity tariffs are different depending to encourage like economy 7. Does it work the same in the water industry, or is that just?
Not in terms of, that's a great question. We actually have had in the past, so our energy bills were different at different times of the year, based on, so we have what we call triads, whereby our energy bills are set. They will take our energy usage at the 3 busiest times during the year. So we have huge programs historically looking at trying to estimate when the UK is going to use the most energy, and then moving to our generators at those times. The industry's moving away from that. We do see water demand peak. We have a morning peak, we have an evening peak. It's different at weekends, it's different at bank holidays, etc. Our tariffs, as far as I know, do not look at charging different for different times of the day. And in truth, I've not heard that discussed. That's a really interesting concept. Well, you would need smart metering as well to tell you when they're using the data, which we currently don't have. So, but fast forward 10 years, if we're back here, having the same conversations with you in 2035, once 90% of our population is smart metered, and we understand usage every 15 minutes, that's the sort of conversation it would enable us to have in the future. Yeah.
And I guess there's the diurnal pattern of the demand. So what we normally see is 2 spikes during the day, morning and evening. So with sort of middle bit. So it's our storage, our treated water storage, the water towers, the surface reservoirs are there to tackle with that. So they go up and down during the day, they fill up overnight, they drain during the day and so on, and then back up and then back down. So that's where we're mainly looking at the average situation. That is not to say that, as Anton says, 10 years from now, we're not going to be looking at the in between the morning and the evening demand and trying to crop that as well.
Thank you, Chair. So I think a quick observation, I think this has been hugely productive from my perspective. You've been open, honest and engaging. I think, Anton, I'm known for asking naughty questions, so I'm going to go in with a slightly naughty one. The Chair will kill me later. Well, when the head of pub affairs disappears off a call, that's a great sign of confidence, I think, because normally if they're jumpy, they hang around. So I think that's real credit to all three of you. So you talked obviously about performance commitments, and they're really important, right? Which of those kind of KPTs or KPIs, whichever algorithm you wish to use, is most important to you in wanting to improve? It can be one you've missed previously, or it can be one that you've already met that you want to improve further.
Apologies. There's 2 groups, if I may. So that's a lie. There's lots. Okay. I'll just start talking and hope something comes out that makes sense. Our biggest challenge is around our CMEX measure. So we have really struggled to be in CMEX is customer measure for experience. So we Ofwat measure our customers. They survey them to effectively ask about the level of service they've received from us once they've had a contact, and then a general second question to all customers that may not have had an interaction to ask about how they know about us. I've been with Affinity Water and its previous names for 19 years. For the first 15 years or so of that, our customer strategy was really to be invisible. So customers, we wanted to turn on the tap, have a water supply and pay by direct debit. And if they didn't know who we were and blame Thames or the Water Board or something like that, it was almost seen as a success. Now there's these CMEX measures, and all of a sudden brand perception and customers giving us positive scores without necessarily knowing who we are has become more important. There's been big investment in things like our branding. The duck gets a bit of a laugh, the blue vans, etc. But it is about us trying to create an identity that connects with the communities that we serve. That's really important for us, and it is one that it is proving challenging in terms of being able to move that forward. We obviously do lots of research to understand levels of service that we provide. As a whole, the industry doesn't differ too much. There's obviously some headlines at the moment about people that are getting some things quite wrong with some big challenges, but on the whole, we're all fixing leaks in the same sort of time, roughly. We're all doing the same sorts of things in terms of tariffs, customer support, etc. So we need to find better ways of moving up. That's probably the biggest one as an executive team that we are focusing on. The second one is probably around PCC for 2 reasons. One, because we have a whole set of environmental measures which are leaving more water in the environment, which we're committed to doing. But
could you explain PCC?
Sorry,
because for us it's Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah,
and
yes, no, sorry.
That's probably a hot topic.
That would be a very different measure. Per capita consumption, sorry. So water demand for us is really important. For a whole set of environmental outcomes that we need to deliver, but ultimately, growth demand is going up. We need to deliver leakage. We need to deliver demand reductions to ensure that we continue to have a resilient water supply. So they're sort of like, they're not really discretionary at all, that they are ones you really have to get right. And then my third one, which I thought of when I was midway through answering, is the other two measures are just purely water quality. That's public health. So that is, you would have read about South West incident, for example, and the things they had there. That's one, again, you can't afford to get that wrong. So there are some sort of non-negotiable. You're supplying a food grade product, you get that right, or people become seriously unwell. We take that extremely seriously. Everything to do with making sure we have enough water to be resilient in the future. There's a whole set of measures around that equally, equally up there in terms of what keeps me awake at night.
Thank you very much for that. I think we could probably go on asking you questions all night, actually, because it's been an absolutely fascinating topic, and you've been really interesting, giving us a great insight into this. And I think we'd all like to thank you very much indeed for coming and for spending this time with us. But I think you've probably got long journeys home, so it's best that we stop now. So I think we'd all, very, very pleased.
Yeah, if I can say, thank you all for your time as well. It's really helpful. If you do have any follow-up questions, please do reach out either now about what we've discussed today, but in the future as well when you're talking to people, etc. Always welcome to follow up. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Right, we've just got one more item, it's very quick, so about the work programme in the future. So for next meeting, which is in April, we have got the police coming, okay? And we're still working on hopefully getting Frimley fuel allotments to come at some stage. And then the meeting after that, we've got the Surrey and Sussex Integrated Care System. So I don't think there's any other question. If anybody thinks of anybody they want to come, then do let us know. Yeah.
I think with everything that's going on around Frimley fuel allotments at the moment, I think Surrey Wildlife Trust as a possible agenda item suddenly becomes way more relevant. I don't know who mentioned it, but I think very good idea. I think it'd be certainly good to hear from the fuel allotments, even if you and I have to step back and Murray as trustees for that particular meeting.
Okay. Any other comments?
I know we've had Accent Housing a number of times because they're the primary housing provider here. We also have, is it A2 Dominion?
And Vivid.
Okay, that was the one I wasn't aware of. Is there value in having additional housing providers, or really is their share of our social housing provision so small that it doesn't make sense?
I think we did once look at other places, other housing, and they are quite small. But I mean, if you've got lots of issues with a particular housing association, then we could have with them in. No, but I mean, if any councils feel that there are a lot of issues with a particular housing association, then we could investigate that.
We have Metropolitan Thames Valley.
Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
Just thinking, it's probably quite a long time now since our MP come to join us, isn't it?
He came about 2 meetings ago, so he tends to come sort of like July-ish. And he came last year, the one we just had. He's come twice.
It was agreed he'd come annually around July time, so I think he's done 2 sessions with us so far. The next one is quite soon, so do pen tough questions. I urge everyone to, particularly with his new brief on Europe.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming, and especially to our Affinity Water people. It's been quite enjoyable. Yeah, it's been, very informative and enjoyable, so thank you. See you all, some of you next week at planning.